All right, here we go with our video lecture notes for Chapter 11, looking at post-classical South Asian, Southeast Asia, all around the Indian Ocean. So we're going to begin where we left off last time with Indian history, and that is the collapse of the classical empires. First was the Mauryan, and then the last one was the Gupta Empire, which had ruled India in the classical era, ruled most of India, unified it under a somewhat centralized state. And after the collapse of the Gupta Empire, India kind of broke back into these kind of like decentralized independent kingdoms. These small kingdoms spread up around all of India, and there wasn't any centralized rule in these kingdoms, fought each other all the time, and there was a lot of political instability in the beginning of the post-classical era. So here we see kind of some of those regional differences, those kingdoms that were broken apart and competing against each other throughout India. Now, because of the instability, the people of the northern half of India were unable to stop Islamic invaders coming in. So during the time of the Umayyad Caliphate, right, so we're talking about in the 700s, Islamic warriors kind of like make their way into India, into northwest India, and they take over this territory called the Sindh. This is kind of the first introduction, the first arrival of Islam into northwest India. Although other merchants had already sailed to other parts of India and kind of slowly started introducing Islam through trade. Now, in southern India, we have a somewhat more stabilized political situation going on. The first of these, they had like different kingdoms that kind of like brought stability. One of them is called the Chola Kingdom. It stabilized southern India and it allowed for more stability. Obviously, there's less invasion, so southern India won't be invaded like parts of northern India was. And because it's in the southern tip of India, the Chola Kingdom had a strong navy which protected its ships, its merchant ships, from pirate attacks and stuff like that, and it kind of participated and protected the Indian Ocean trade network. All right, so here we see a map of India, right? So in the green area, this is kind of like a kingdom that had existed in shortly after the Guptas, but we didn't need to worry about them. Chola Kingdom's in the south. There's another one called Vijayanagar, also in the south, but we didn't need to worry about those either. This is the kingdom of Vijayanagar, and what's unique, this is one of the most famous like structures left behind by the state, and this is an elephant caravanserai. All right, so those of you remember, the caravanserai are the kind of like the hotels for the caravans, right? Where there are these huge buildings with lots of rooms, right, that would accommodate all the horses, all the camels, and all the merchants traveling along a caravan, throughout, the Silk Road. And in India, they had one of these, but this was for elephants, right? So this, what you're looking at, are the stables for elephants. And it kind of shows us the wealth that they had. They actually have elephants as part of their their caravans or their trade. This kingdom, they will continue after Chola, and they were very much Hindu. So what we're going to see is that southern half of India is going to be very, 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 very strict supporter of Hinduism. While northern India, even though most of the people are going to be Hindu, there's also going to be a growing population of Muslims, right? And Islam is going to have little impact in southern India, unlike in northern India. Now, one of the guys responsible for the kind of the political chaos and violence and instability that we see in northern India during this time is this guy called Mahmud of Ghazni. And here you see him with his wonderful hair. Mahmud of Ghazni, he is a Turk. Right? The Turks came from Central Asia. They settled into parts of the Middle East, and most of them will eventually adopt Islam. and they kind of take the more radical, more extremist view of Islam, and they want to start spreading it through violence. So they start invading northwestern India. This huge territory is known as the Punjab, and the Mahmud. This guy Mahmud is able to lead this army and conquer this region. And he was not a nice guy, so he because of his kind of devotion to Islam, he felt like others have that it is his duty to spread Islam by force, right? And that fighting in the way of God, that's like the way to paradise. So they would destroy Buddhist temples, they would destroy Hindu temples. They thought all these temples with statues were like they're all sacrilegious, and that they're all need to be destroyed because there's only one God, there's only Allah. And so he kind of unifies parts of northern India for a short time until he passes, and his attempts to forcibly convert the Indians was not popular, obviously, because no one wants to be forced to change their lifestyle or change their religion. But he kind of starts the process of the arrival of Islam in northern India. And his descendants eventually are going to set up what we call the Sultanate of Delhi. So Delhi is the central city, you see it right up there. It is the modern day capital. Nowadays it's called New Delhi. And from this central city, they're going to expand a territory controlling most of northern India. And the ruler, the emperor, is going to be known as the Sultan. And this is what we call the Sultanate of Delhi. But even though they kind of control this large territory in northern India, they barely control it. And the fact is that they fail to develop a bureaucracy, which means that they don't have real centralized rule. And the Sultan, he needs to share his power with other princes. So even though the ruler, the Sultan, and his royal family and the upper class people, they were Muslims, the rulers were Muslims, they're in the minority group. They're not part of the majority. A majority of the people in northern India then, as is now, is Hindu. They're Hindus. So they had all these like local rulers and princes who were Hindu. So they kind of like worked with the Sultanate of Delhi, but they didn't really like have to listen to everything the guy said. And as bad and as unorganized and kind of like not really all that remarkable, Sultanate of Delhi is at least credited for one thing, and which is a unique thing in that they were actually able to stop a Mongol invasion. When we get to the Mongols, you'll see that pretty much no one is able to stop the Mongols. Not the Chinese, not the Persians, not the Muslims, not the Russians, pretty much no one. But the Indians, the Sultanate of Delhi, is somehow